Hello and welcome to Valemount Votes, VCTV's one-on-one series of interviews with the candidates for mayor and council for the upcoming municipal election. Before we get started, I'm going to go through the format of the show so you can kind of get a sense of where we're going to go with it. First of all, we're going to have a bio of the candidate that's going to be read, and they wrote them themselves. Secondly, we'll be moving into the candidate's opening statement. They'll have up to 3 minutes to make an opening statement. Following that, we'll be going into prepared questions that you, the viewers, have submitted for the candidates. They've all had a chance to see them and take a look and make some notes on what they're going to say today. They will have a specified amount of time to answer each of those questions. After that, there's going to be 3 questions for each candidate that are going to be specific to them, that have been written specifically for them. They haven't had a chance to see these yet, and that's to let you gauge how they answer questions without preparation time for it. Again, they'll be timed. And then finally, we'll be doing a candidate's closing statement where they'll get a chance to wrap up and have 3 minutes to do that as well. Just a few notes. So we're doing this in a live-to-tape format, so it's not being broadcast live, but we're not going to edit the program. We're going to go right through from beginning to end. Whatever happens, we'll make it work. I will be monitoring the time. I have a stopwatch here, and we'll be keeping track of the time so we know the candidates are all on time. If they don't use all the time in one segment, they're not allowed to add it to another segment. So they have a finite amount of time for this. Each candidate's interview is going to air an equal number of times on VCTV, and we'll be airing them in alphabetical order. And once each interview is run on VCTV once, then we're going to upload all of them as a group to YouTube so you can have a look at them whenever you like for it. So without further ado, we'll get right into introducing our guest today, who is Andru McCracken. Andru McCracken moved to Valemount in 2001 to pursue a career in journalism. Shortly after moving here, he realized what it was he was missing in the city. Since arriving, he co-founded a community newspaper called the Robson Valley Times, then worked at a local television station, I think maybe this one. He was elected mayor in 2011. All 3 represented once-in-a-lifetime opportunities for McCracken. He serves as a board member on the Columbia Basin Trust, as a director on the Regional District of Fraser-Fort George, as an advisor to the Northern Trust. He is a member of the Columbia River Treaty Local Governments Committee, and was vice chair of the Regional Collaboration Initiative made up of communities from around the Columbia Basin. He has been a strong voice for geothermal power, bringing a popular resolution to the Union of BC Municipalities, which has garnered much interest from Geoscience BC, BC Hydro, and the Ministry of Energy and Mines. He believes that Valemount needs economic development and that forestry is one of the best ways for us to expand as a community. He is adamant that the community needs to retain its current character and quality of life while creating new jobs. McCracken loves the outdoor activities that Valemount has to offer. He did his first backcountry tour on homemade bindings in early 2002. In 2013, he married Laura Kyle. Together, they plan to raise a family in Valemount after they get settled. Andru, welcome.
Thank you, Gord, for having me. What an opportunity. Thanks for making the station shine. I think this is a great opportunity for us.
Well, we want to make sure that people have an opportunity to get to know you all a little bit better, so this is that opportunity. So we're going to start off with your opening statement. You have up to 3 minutes, and if you just want to look into this camera, you can start whenever you like, and good luck.
I'm running for the position of mayor of Valemount because I have a deep love for this community, and I want to see Valemount thrive and grow. I think in the last 3 years, Council and I have been able to start some important work, and I'd love to see that through the next term.
Great. Short and sweet. To the point. So we'll get right into the questions. So as you know, the viewers were asked to submit some questions. We compiled them. There were many questions. We kind of compiled them down to 7 to kind of keep this to a decent length. You're going to have a specified amount of time to answer each one. So the first one is on the topic of economic development for Valemount. This was by far the most questions we received on this, and it's a very important matter for Valemount. So the question is, what is your strategy for strengthening Valemount's economy? How would you attract more businesses and development to Valemount? You have 9 minutes for that.
Right. Economic development has been really important over the last term. The strategy going forward, I think, is to continue on what we've been working on. One of the really basic things that I think people can understand is we've tried to be an advocate for local businesses. Of course, it's the village council that sets up limits to make sure that people don't put in for instance, an incompatible use, say a pig slaughtering facility on 5th Avenue or something like that. We're charged with that, but we've taken responsibility for making sure that when people come to the village with ideas, that we can help them see their dream, help them find the right place for it if the area is going to be an issue, and help them get through red tape to make sure that they can be successful. I don't think in any economic climate that would be the same, but I think in our tentative economic climate that we've had, it's really important. Right. Anytime that there's a business that has the potential to be successful, has an idea, it's council's prerogative to go hard and try to accommodate them and work with them. And that means not waiting for them to come in and propose something wrong, but to talk with them about their idea and try to work with them to get it into a situation that will work. I have to say, we're very blessed. We've had a lot of new entrepreneurs come to Valemount who are very savvy and understand that there are rules and regulations and be willing to work with us. It's not all been easy. Some of them have been very contentious. For instance, Dave Grant's food truck, the Funky Goat, which is something that council really wanted to support, but it took us a while to come up with a good answer. But I would say that if you look across municipalities, and I'd say it was a fairly high-performing time. I would list that actually as something that we did well, even though it wasn't instantaneous, even though it took some work. One has to realize, to do this work that we consider good, sometimes it displaces other people. So we do need to have a public forum. So if we're going to allow a food truck, that has an influence on other restaurants and how they operate. So I think we've taken that work and tried to be proactive with it. We actually have a lot of other major initiatives that I've spoken about elsewhere, and I think that are very, they're well understood in the community. A major resort proposal is in the works for Mount Trudeau and Arthur Mahan. That's something that we've been actively supporting and shaping. It's interesting. As mayor, that was really the reason that I put my name in for mayor. I'd been through this sort of canoe mountain gondola. I call it a debacle. It was, how does a community become crushed by a development that doesn't even happen? So we experienced the negative impacts of that one without having any of the positive things that come along with it. So for me, becoming mayor was really about, okay, well, let's make sure as we move through this, that Valemount grows stronger as a community. And if it fails, we'll be better for having undertaken the project and investigated those things. I'll give you an instance. An example of that is to entertain the resort. We understand that other communities, when they get resorts, there are some really crazy things that happen with housing. Now, we don't have a really good sense of what the housing situation is now, but we've undertaken some studies that help us understand what the impact of the resort would be, but they also play into what is the current seniors housing situation? What is the current low-income housing situation? And how are we doing as a community? So by being thoughtful about things, we're not wasting that money on a study that will never be of use. We're trying to do it in a way that even if this thing falls flat in its face, we can say, well, you know what? We had that housing study and we've got the strategy and we've got a good plan for seniors going forward, even if this resort hasn't happened. Right. So that's the kind of attitude we need. We need to be super positive and not commit ourselves. How are we doing for time?
Still got 4.5 minutes.
Oh my goodness. Economic development has been a passion for me, and I'm not sure if people realize I have been an outspoken editor at a newspaper, and I was the station manager here for a while. But when I was the editor of the newspaper, I ran a small business in Valemount for 4.5 years of some of the most economically depressed time that Valemount has seen in a while. I'd say that we aren't too much further ahead of that now, though I think we have some rays of light happening, and I think there's a really good attitude. But there were pretty dark days when my wife at the time, Rashmi Narayan, and I started that newspaper. I understand how businesses hustle, and I appreciate them. And when they come to me and say, hey, you're squeezing me for every nickel I got in taxes, I understand that. So economic development is about, it's not just about trying to get more businesses to come, it's trying to respect the businesses that are here and not squeeze them out, right? And there's some other initiatives that I think are really important. In my intro, I mentioned that I think forestry is a way forward. I'll tell you why. Forestry is something that we've done here. It's been the economic job that our community has done for forever. It's something we know about, we're enculturated to, we do it well, we have the expertise. Young men who leave here typically have a really good horse sense of how to do these things. And young people, men and women. Doing what we're good at, that's a good thing.
Right.
And it's not a blast from the past. I don't think we'll be getting our old mill back. But one has to understand, when you look at proper value-added forestry and proper value-added milling opportunities, the job creation is not related to wood supply. So even though we have a very small community forest and a relatively small wood basket, that's not the determination of the number of jobs that we can create in forestry. So there's a huge opportunity there. And this is an interesting point on economic development. One of the ways that I've pursued economic development is by letting our partners do their work. And the community forest is taking great strides in getting industrial land to try to woo new investment here and existing investment onto that property to create the kind of jobs that we want. So my job as mayor sometimes is to go hard and really press and be an advocate. And then sometimes it's to let the people who have that job to do their work. And I think it's a kind of a fine balance. I think that's about as far as I want to go. But I think what I'd like people to understand is, and I think if they look really hard, they'll be able to see the fruits of this labor on economic development. If people look hard, they will see it's a priority. We haven't turned that corner yet. It's not that we're in a fantasy land where everybody is getting work here and the community is growing at an exponential rate. But I hope that they feel that this council has been respecting their wishes, because they've made it loud and clear that economic development is a real priority, as shown by this being the first question.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you very much. We'll move into the second question, which is on infrastructure in the village. And this is a fairly focused question, so we're going to give you 3 minutes to this. And the question is, what is your opinion on infrastructure maintenance in the village, in particular the repair and maintenance or replacement of known concerns prior to, rather than waiting until things break and become a problem and result in more expensive emergency repairs and damage? If you're re-elected, do you plan to make it an important part of the budget?
Okay, great question, very timely. Yes. We have a shovel-ready project, one that we pitched to the province in order to replace that particular. So you've given a lot of background on that, but there's a little bit more. We had a sewer breakdown, for instance, on 8th Avenue, and it damaged people's homes. And I think people are looking to answers from the village council to say, hey, what's going on? Maintain these things, look after them, and repair them. Don't let them blast and then throw your hands in the air. And I'd say, okay, I understand that, but that's not really how it's been working. The idea that, do you know that every day we have public works who go and visit each lift station in the village? There are 9. Every day they go there and check and make sure they're working. So it's not that we don't, it's not something you can just leave in the ground and hope that it continues to work. There is ongoing scheduled maintenance. Right. I think the thing is, we're getting to the end of the useful life of those pieces, and that is the issue. Has infrastructure been our main priority? I think we might bounce back up to the first question. We have been very focused on economic development. We continue to put cash in reserve for sewer. It's mandated by law, and we're doing that. We have money in that reserve account. We have a plan to build this. I guess what we need to do is make sure that the province and the federal government are hearing us, and that they come up with the 1/3, 1/3 to match our 1/3 to get these projects done. And so I think probably what I take from this question and my answer back is, we need to prioritize this and get this done.
Okay, great, thank you. So we'll move on to another somewhat contentious issue, which is parking. As you know, there's challenges in both the winter and the summer, and this question is kind of a two-parter, so we'll give you a little bit longer to answer the combined question, 5 minutes. The first half of it deals with winter, and the second half of it deals with summer. So the winter question is, when the village plows the snow, it makes a ridge, and trucks and trailers have to park on the street, and it makes a tunnel going down 5th Avenue. Last year, someone almost hit 4 sledders because they came out from between the trucks and trailers in this tunnel. Very difficult to see them. How is the Village Council going to fix the parking problem on 5th Avenue during the winter months?
I want to just say, I know that where this concern comes from. And the fellow who pitched this question came to me with a proposal. And we have developed that proposal. He said, do off-site parking for sleds and sledders. Get those rigs off the street because it's a nasty concern there. And we've done that. So he wanted it to be done as a business. And interestingly, the trading post may have that capability. I think it's one of the things that they're doing is to secure sled vehicles on their thing. So they've recently taken over the trading post, and that'll be a new service offered, which is awesome. But we're also taking ownership of that. It will be different this year. Parking will not be allowed on 5th Avenue in front of those hotels. There is a Bigfoot trail. It's a sidewalk there. Some people may not like that. I've heard a lot of that we shouldn't have a walking trail there. Well, you know, you've got a mayor who rides his bike to work every week, whether it's winter or snow. When I go to the office, I ride on the Bigfoot trail. And I see other people walking to get their mail on that trail. It's not okay for me to have us dance through these things. So I know I don't agree with everyone on that, but that's the situation. So we have got a lot. We piloted this last year. It did not work well. We're going to do it again with more communications with the hotels, and frankly, a little bylaw enforcement saying, get your rig out of here or we're going to tow it. Right? And I mean, that's what needs to happen to get people to accept this new thing. But yes, there is a safety concern. I think we've got it well addressed.
Okay, great. Let's move on to the summer half of the question. So the question is, it's a well-known fact that we have a major parking crisis in the downtown core when it comes to accommodating tourists and travelers with oversized vehicles, such as RVs, trucks, pulling trailers, that type of thing. What measures would you implement to alleviate that problem?
Okay, I just want to ask editorially, is it your comment that it's a major parking crisis?
No.
Okay.
It's the question as written.
Oh, I see. I apologize then. I was going to, because I mean, one interesting thing of being the mayor or sitting on council is doing an analysis of what is a crisis and what's not. And I would just say is that I might not put that piece, and I don't mean to belittle the person who's doing that, but I might not say that this is a major crisis. I would say infrastructure is a crisis thing. Economic development is on a crisis scale. Right. The village should provide leadership on this, but I'll tell you, I look forward to first hearing from the Chamber of Commerce. We haven't with regards to this, and it'd be interesting to see what they come up with, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce or a sort of businesses downtown. I think the village may have a prerogative, obviously could have a prerogative to make an investment in parking downtown. But these are big, heady things. You know, when the village does stuff, we get in trouble. So if businesses can say, okay, here's a problem, here's a proposed solution, that would really help us along the way. And I see that as the Chamber of Commerce sort of understands these things in a different way. They might be the group to help us with that. Curious that they haven't. And so I think that goes back to the question is this a crisis? If we have local people who aren't able to get into the grocery store and have mobility problems or whatever, we may need to do something with finding more wheelchair accessible parking or something like that, address it in a different way. But here's some easy solutions, if I still have a little bit of time.
Yeah, you have a minute and a half.
I think we really ought to be asking employees of downtown shops to stay out of that very obvious parking on the main street, because I think it congests things, and I think it's just unhelpful. And it's such a small town, we know whose car is where. And I apologize, I'm gonna call your number and say, hey, come on, we've got it. It's really awkward for people. Get your car out of there. Like park a street back or just off to the side. That may help. And if people are unwilling to do that, I think we may, we have a bylaw officer who's actually doing work. We may have the ability to impose a 2-hour parking limit and say, hey, don't park here for more than 2 hours or we're gonna give you a ticket. And that would maybe a way of freeing up space without creating new space. However, long term, I think the chamber needs to help us figure out, or downtown businesses get together and say, okay, here are the issues that we see going forward. What's the appropriate response? Not that it is the village that takes the action, but let's have a little help in getting the vision.
Right. Okay, thank you. Next question is, I guess, infrastructure-based as well. We had a lot of questions about water meters. And this is going to be a two-parter as well, so we'll give you 5 minutes to answer the combined section, however you want to allot it. The first one is on water meters in general, and the question is, do you feel water meters are necessary for Valemount? Why or why not?
Okay, I think water meters could be a real benefit to Valemount. Reducing our use of water is way cheaper than building another reservoir. Building new reservoir capacity, extremely expensive. So I think water meters are not something that's popular on one side. One element is it looks like a new cost, and of course and people are right. They're no dummies. These actual meters cost money, and they go into your house and they need to be installed, and that all costs. And where is that money coming from? And it's like, well, you see it right there. But the idea is, if we're paying less money for that than building a giant new reservoir, then I think that would be a good investment. I think we can be straightforward with people and say, here's the trade-off. You know, either we do this or we hike your taxes like this, and this is how it gets paid for in the end. My brother works for a utility in Edmonton, and they deal with water. Edmonton has 14 days water, is my understanding, in reserve. Recently, in September of 2012, we had a repercussion of a major blowout in our creek where our pumps went offline. We were out of water within 2 days. That's not acceptable. So that's what's flagged this water meter issue. And so that's one possible way of dealing with this, is if everybody's using a lot less and is much more mindful about water, that could save us a ton of money. Because if we need to get 7 times that amount of water up there, that's going to cost everybody a huge amount of taxes. So how do we really value this resource? The public good is that if we meter, people use less and require less dollars into infrastructure. And again, it'll be like our garbage program, which I think is inherently fair and democratic. It's that with the garbage piece, if you have a smaller can, you pay less. And I think that's a really good option for people who are committed to saving and not producing a lot of garbage. It costs less to deal with your garbage if you produce less. Well, that's fair. If somebody's filling up their pool all the time, by rights, why am I paying for that? Why are seniors on 7th paying for somebody's pool to fill their pool, right? That costs a lot of money to have the infrastructure in place to clean that water, process that water. So I think it's an issue of fairness. People see it just as a new cost, but I think you need to look a little bit more behind that. Valemount as a village, by the way, was incorporated around water. That was the only reason we became a village back in '62. And it took a long time for people to get on board with that. But I will say, water, that's the issue for Valemount. It was when we realized that our septic fields were contaminating our drinking supply underneath our feet that people said, okay, we've got a real problem here. As a community, we need to raise funds to put in a water system. So it seems like water meters is like solving a problem with a big anvil, a big hammer. But at the same time, it's an important issue for us.
Okay. We've got about a minute and 45 to handle the other half of this question. It's specific to smart water meters. How do you feel about smart water meters? Are you aware of the mounting concerns regarding health, security, and privacy from them? Do you know what the alternatives to smart meters are? You got about a minute and a half.
Right. I think there are major concerns with smart meters. What I do is get together a panel of folks with an interest in this and come up with a reasonable solution. If we get that far along, we say, yeah, it's too expensive to build more reservoir capacity, or barring that we don't find a major leak somewhere that's causing, to say, if this is the way forward, let's get people involved and find something that works. I understand some of the fears around smart meters, and I guess one ridiculous thing is apparently they transmit all day, every day. Like they send out blasts every 10 seconds or something like this. And I mean, is that not wasting electricity if they're sending it? Like, how often do you need to have your water bill? So I don't know, wireless or not wireless or whatever, but surely we could come up with something that a technology that would be right for us. So smart meter technology is really elegant because you don't have to somebody go around really labor intensively to every house. And I think people are always beating us up for creating new jobs, at the village. However, I mean, it is job creation. I think we should have a public conversation about that and say, how do you feel more comfortable? Do you want the old one that turns the dial and somebody comes to your house and reads it? We could have a conversation about that. And I also think meters are not fait accompli. I think we need to talk with the community, and maybe they'll tell us, no, just build tons more reservoir capacity, and that's the way we'll go. We'll be happy with our giant tax bill.
All right. Okay, great. Just about used all the time on that one. So we're going to move into another kind of multi-part question. And this one we're going to give you 5 minutes for as well, and you can break it up again whatever way you want. So it's basically youth center / community center / activities for children and youth, kind of all in one combined, and we'll talk about it in 2 areas. So the premise is there are not many things for children to do and children and youth to do in Valemount. The first part of the question deals with the youth center or a community center or both. It wasn't really specific. And the question is, where do you stand on creating a community center or a youth center for Valemount?
I answered this one a little bit differently when I did my prep work for this. I'm just going to answer the way politicians do. I'm going to answer what I want to answer, which is, so I'm excited about the mountain bike trail system. I'm also excited about if the mountain resort happens, I would work like a dog to try to make sure that kids in Valemount got ski free passes. Now, that doesn't really answer the question, because I think a community youth center is more inclusive than that. I would just, this is not on my script, but I'm just thinking now, people run youth programs in town already. They do a really good job. So can we get youth perspective on this and actually see, like, is somebody saying this from outside who has youth at that age who are underdone, this may be the parents talking, but if we did that, would the kids go? I was involved in the youth center back in the day, which was underneath the curling rink, and it was really good for some kids. For a lot of kids, it didn't really make a lot of sense, and it had some pluses and minuses. I think youth are important, but I think we need to take direction from them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's break it off into the other half of that, which is kind of community center. So a little bit different than a specified.
Oh, I see.
youth center.
Then just for youth. Okay, we have a ton of community-owned buildings here. We've got the Lions, we've got the Legion. That's a little bit different, but we've got the activity center at the seniors hall. We've got the community hall. We've got the part of the year the info center is unused. We've got public spaces all over the curling rink, and we've got a community space in the arena. We're not short for spaces. I think we need to all get together and brainstorm. What is it that we want, and what do we have, and how do we deploy all these in a smart way? Right. I think that question, it's time to answer that question. And I think it's time for hard questions around, as a community member, I guess we spend a lot of money heating this town up with propane. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for our pocketbooks. It's bad for our community. We're all fundraising. We're all like eating brownies and stuff. We should be eating brownies, and those brownies, somebody baked those things. That money should be going for really good stuff, not propane.
Right.
Right? So I think we need to have a think on that. And respect to all of the groups that own buildings and have buildings, and there's been a lot of work. Our community center is radically underused. Like, let's find a way. And I actually think my thinking has changed on this in preparation for this campaign. We need to be leaders in community creation as well, right? When people get together and have an experience together, that creates community. When I go to the coffee shop and meet all my friends, that's creating community. When I'm down the street on my bike and I meet people, that's creating community. Are we creating enough? Do we need to have community dances, like without drinking or something like that? What is our role? And I think sometimes we get caught in our boxes. And back, I think this previous council made a thing that's saying around charging for the community hall thing. And to be honest, I'm rethinking that at this point. People are saying, I want to live in a community where we're all tight. I want to live in a community where we know each other and see each other. Are we doing things to prevent that as council? And if we are, maybe that's more important. Maybe it's more important to create the kind of community we want to live in than squeeze two dimes at every nickel.
Right. No, perhaps. I want to spend a little time, got about a minute and a half to answer the other half of this question, which is, we actually had a few on this one, which is spray park. Where do you stand on creating a spray park, wading pool, or some other water-based recreational facility for children, specifically for children in Valemount?
This is a really tough one for me, because the spray park is something we can only use for a couple months when it's really hot. And I honestly, I'm not a huge fan of the idea. No, that's me personally. But we have young families here who really want a spray park. I hear it all the time. There's been a petition for a spray park. I would hate to be the guy who makes a spray park and then nobody uses it. What would be really awesome is if the young families who are here say, hey, you know what, we're here, we've got kids, we want a spray park, we're building it. And I leave the door open to that. Rock and roll. I think that's the way to go forward. For council to believe it, who all we see is the huge cost of maintaining it. That's our vision. So if somebody came to us with a proposal and said, this is it, we'll take care of half of maintenance or whatever, or we'll do this much, we'll supervise or do the season cleanup or something. Maybe there's a way forward, but again, let's get other people involved in this decision. Don't just say to council, we want this, make it happen, but let's work together on solutions. But I really don't want to, young families here with kids who are going to go to school is exactly what we need. So in a way, I wonder if I'm playing this one strategically wrong and we just say, yes, whatever you want. But at the same time, it is a pretty big investment. And as I understand other communities, it has real repercussions.
Okay, great.
Did I go over?
No, just right on. That's perfect. Thank you. Okay, we'll move into question number 6, and this one is a little more focused. This is on communication in general, and you've got up to 3 minutes for this one. And the question is, communication is key to learning what is of importance to the constituents, not only during the campaign, but after the dust is settled. If elected, how will you communicate with constituents to learn of their concerns, and how will you relay this information back to council for action?
Good open council meetings where we talk about what's happening, right? So, that hasn't always happened, and I think that's really important. So when we're raising our wages or increasing our benefits or something, or raising taxes, that we have a conversation about what is happening that people can understand in the community, right? That's good communication. I had a commitment to communication. It was kind of my thing because I used to be a journalist. I used to be the station manager, and I felt that I couldn't understand council meetings even though I knew what was going on and had a copy of the agenda. And I thought, okay, I'm broadcasting this on TV, and how does anybody know what the hell's going on? Things have changed a lot. We've got the agendas online. That was the last council did that. We're committed to this. Further, I think the most important innovation in Valemount governance that keeps us responsible is community conversations. So we have that annual town hall, and that's where people come in and they decide what the issue of the day is. And Lord help us if there's an issue of the day that people are upset about. The first one I think had 120 people at it because people are really angry about the rocks on the trail and every other thing. And so it got everybody there. But you know what? I think that helped us grow together as a community. That's what I'm talking about, creating community. We got a responsibility to make people feel like they belong here and that they have a say and what they say matters. And I think that is part of the community conversation. So I think we're getting some of that stuff right, and I would say we have a commitment to do it. Some people have asked me, will I continue doing my blog? And I think I will. Not out of, because it's therapeutic for me. But I think if you're interested in council, come to a council meeting or watch the council meeting online. And I think the way that we do it, you will probably understand what's going on, and that's our responsibility to you. This blog has been good for me because it allows me to really get down into the issues. And it helps me get things off my chest. I've really been enjoying this. I don't think that's, I think that's over and above. I think that's just because that's my nature. I really enjoy writing. I used to run a newspaper. I don't have that outlet anymore. So the blog has been good. Not everybody's had a chance to read my blog, which is a problem that I think about. If seniors aren't connected and they're not finding that blog, and I don't think I've done a good job, I think that's a bit of a problem. So I'm going to have to work that one out and say, is a blog the right tool? But yeah, how do I communicate what's on my heart as mayor?
All right. Okay, great. And last question that's been submitted by the public here deals with diversity in the village, and we'll give you 3 minutes to answer this one as well. And the question is, how do you feel about working hard to increase diversity in our village? For example, attracting persons of differing sexual orientation, race, religion, persons with disabilities, refugees, etc.
Okay. This is a really important one for me. When I moved to Valemount, I was in a relationship with a lady from India. So she's a person of color, I guess, or I'm not sure what the correct term is. And we moved here, and nobody batted an eye when we moved to Valemount. And I fell in love with the place. I found that charming. I found that, wow, this community is really open and accepting, and experienced, right? Like, it's not like the first time they saw a person who was from India. And it was, yeah, that really colored my thing, because when I moved here, I was ready. I was from a small town in Alberta. I was ready for a little bit of a battle to gain recognition that sometimes happens in communities where people have to come to an understanding of you because you're different. But one thing about Valemount is it is so accepting, and that's something that we need to champion. So I think right now the community is great. I want to tell you what I've been doing on this front, and this will probably lose me votes if anything. I do not drive a luxury car. I do not dress like a big fake. I'm not going to be that mayor who looks like the mayor. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't think that that helps anything. I'm just a guy, right? When I go to do my thing, I put on my battle dress. When I go to meet the premier, I put on my suit and tie, and I try to represent the people of Valemount well. Like, I'm not going slovenly or anything. But when I'm here, I want to be me, and I want you to feel that you can talk to me. And I think that's important, and I think I accept you, you accept me. If people want to find communities where people exclude people based on religion or race or religion or sexual orientation, there are lots of those communities. We don't need to become one of those communities. I would say that my experience is that this is how Valemount is. It is open, it is accepting, and I want to champion that. And if people have an issue with that, I'm ready to go. Like, let's do this thing, because that's where I'm living. That's why I've moved here. I'm not ready to give it up.
Great. Excellent. Thank you very much for the very thoughtful answers to those questions. We're going to move into some specific questions for you, and they're all fairly focused, so we're going to give you about 3 minutes to answer each of these.
Sure.
And the first one, I guess, is this is your first term as mayor. What have you learned in your first term as mayor?
Probably the most important lesson was actually this. I was getting into a lot of trouble as mayor. People would come to me with their concerns, and I would get really angry at them. It was sort of an internal thing. I think I covered it up well to a lot, but I had big questions about why that was happening. If somebody wants to come and talk to me about this, I can tell you about a few embarrassing things that happened to me where I thought I heard something different than what was being said because I had my backup. And then I went and studied that. What was that about? So there's this actual course called nonviolent communication. It's not that I was beating people up or anything like this, but it was that I was getting out of control of my emotions when people would say things that triggered me, and I would act in an irrational way, in a way that didn't make sense for the mayor to act, in a way that didn't make sense, that didn't create new understanding. So there's this whole field of thought around this Marshall Rosenberg guy who studied what this is about. And I mean, it's amazing. It is really, really a cool thing. So that is probably the #1 lesson that I've learned as mayor is how to really consider what somebody's saying to me. And if it makes me feel bad or upset or something like that, really to try not to be a wingnut and just think about, okay, what is that triggering in me? And then if it is something, if I analyze it and it really is still super mean, then I try to think, okay, what is it going on for them that they're doing this? And that has made me, frankly, a lot more statesman. It's made me a lot less exciting of a person to be around, but I think it's gone well for the village of Valemount. So that's the #1 thing. And I want to say, there are lots of things that I've needed to learn in this job. There's a lot. I've learned so much. Probably one of the greatest gifts has been working with former Chair Gary Merkel at the Columbia Basin Trust and the whole board there. Not just Gary Merkel, but his personality sort of defines this way of being who you are, being grounded, and then doing just the most amazing work in communities. I'm so glad he was only chair for a year when I got onto the board. I'm so glad I had I'm not sure if I had his mentorship or what, but I'm glad I was able to hang around with him. Yeah. Great.
You got about 30 seconds. Anything else that comes to mind that you've learned as in your first term?
No, but I would say I try to continue to be humble because I know I've got a lot more to learn.
Right. No, it's a constant learning process, I'm sure. All right, we'll move into the second question then. So I think you kind of touched a little bit on this already, but we'll kind of go a little more in depth in it. And the question is, you've been criticized in the past by some for the way in which you sometimes communicate with the public. Some view your communication style or your humor as disrespectful at times. Some view it as maybe unbecoming of the mayor's office at times. What would you say to that?
That's really interesting. I'd say certainly something that I'm working on. Yeah. And it's a constant uphill battle. I think one of the things that I struggle with is passion. I have passion. And that's why typically when I'm at a conference or whatever and I go to the microphone, some people will listen, because if I'm saying something, it's something I care about deeply. And that brings with it its challenges. And I mean, the answer to that is to stop caring about what you're passionate about. The answer is to try to learn how to communicate that in a way that doesn't send people flying out of the room. But I still haven't got it, and I still occasionally get excited, and I still turn other people off, for sure. I think I will say I've been very dedicated to building relationships with council, because that was an uphill battle. Council really needs to, when council feels comfortable to say what their ideas are, imagine how difficult it is to do the work of council and the mayor. We only get to talk about issues when we're gathered in front of the camera, right? That's the only time. If we can't feel comfortable and talk there, then we're not doing our work, because we are not allowed legally to the 4 or 5 of us meet and have a conversation behind closed doors. So if you feel everything is there in the council, if you feel we're not doing it right during those council meetings, then we're not doing it right, because that is the job of governance. And I guess the thing is, when I'm super passionate and have no problem speaking loudly to issues, how do I make the space for council to feel confident to say their piece?
Right.
And I'd say listening to people like Gary Merkel, the current chair of the Columbia Basin Trust, Greg Deck, those are and Neil Muth, those are people who are expert at this, and I aspire to get there.
Okay. Excellent. And so the last question we have for you, I guess, is a little bit more of a thinking question, and that is, what specifically is your vision for Valemount for the next 4 years? I mean, we're only talking about a term of office here, so the question's been raised. What do you want to do in the next 4 years? And if re-elected, what plan do you have to help achieve that vision?
Yeah. This will probably get me not re-elected, but I think Valemount has the fundamental things that it needs to be successful right now. And I think not losing those should be the mayor's first job, right? We have a community where we feel proud of, where when a young girl wants to go on a big, expensive basketball trip or whatever, boom, the community has raised money in a minute. When somebody gets cancer, we all come together as a community. That's not every community that can do that. We're not the only caring community, but we are so good as a community. We have the really important things as a village right. What I think we need to do is, gosh, it's hard for families when one person is working away. We really need to create jobs here. We need the people who are invested here, building homes here. There's lots of young families building homes here. We need to support them. So my vision is of a community that supports itself, where there's work for people who are willing to work, where there is expanding opportunities, not shrinking opportunities, but also a community that knows itself. And that includes, even if we go down this crazy road of getting a major resort here. And I think that's, if people have been to communities that have gone through that transition, you'll see that they typically don't get through that well. But Valemount is different. We can get through it super well. We can become more close-knit as a community post a resort investment kind of thing. And that's a big thing to say, and I mean, people should challenge me on that and say, "Are you sure? Are you sure it's not just going to be Audis and everything driving down, and then we feeling like we don't belong here?" And I think is that when we've put the call for people to get involved and take ownership of the community, I mean, we do. As a community, we take ownership of our community. But what we need to do is have a mayor who doesn't sell us down the pipe. And that's not saying anything against my opponent or anything like that. I'm just saying is that sometimes we get stars in our eyes and dollar signs and say, oh, we're gonna, our community's we're gonna answer all the questions with this silver bullet. But you know what? We have most of the questions answered with the silver bullet. We just need to provide a little bit more economic activity, and more importantly, not inhibit creating really important jobs that we can bring back to Valemount. So my vision is a vibrant, growing Valemount that has even more youth in it. It's even more diverse, and where we're welcoming, And this is important too, because if we do become a resort destination, we're going to need to welcome people on our own terms, and that means not. Sometimes with sledders, we bear with them. We bear that they're here. That's not right. We can't do that anymore. We have to take an active role in this relationship if we want to. And if the community doesn't want to, I can understand that. But from what I'm hearing, we're willing to explore this idea, and I think as mayor, I'm the person I want to be that person who tries to find what the community's vision is and makes that happen as we go forward.
Okay, great. Well, we're out of time for that. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for the real thoughtful and well-spoken answers on all those questions. And people can, I'm sure, ask you more at the All Candidates Forum that's coming up as well. We're going to give you now 3 minutes to do a closing statement to camera, just like you did at the end here, at the beginning. So
okay,
whatever you want. Maybe I stole your thunder there. I'm not sure, but
no.
Take what you go, and whenever you're ready, you just
great.
Go for it.
Okay. First, let me say thank you, and Gord, I really appreciate this opportunity. I think that if we work together, we can do great things. I guess at this point, I'm going to ask people. I'm glad there's an election, and I'm glad that people are going to vote one way or the other, because we can't sleepwalk through this next portion of our history. And so, whoever you elect, work with them in that council in good faith, try and support them, punish them if they get it wrong, I understand that, but try and work with them in order to make Valemount great. That's the thing. This is the challenge. If you elect me, I will try and encourage you to do that. If you elect somebody else, it's still the same work of the community. We need to get through this together. And yeah, vote Andru McCracken. I hope I can count on your support. And I know that I talk a lot, but I'm learning to listen. So if you see me on the street and you're curious about what's going on in town, talk to me about it.
Great. Thank you very much. So I'm now going to just take a couple minutes to give some voting information, and then we'll wrap it up here. So, of course, voting day is Saturday, November the 15th, and the voting location will be at Valemount Community Hall, right across from VCTV here at 101 Gore Street. Voting times will be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you're not able to make that, there is advance voting, and it's been scheduled for Wednesday, November the 5th, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and that'll be at the Village of Valemount Council Chambers. So Wednesday the 5th of November for advance voting at the Village of Valemount Council Chambers. This year is a little bit different for us because we're going to electronic voting. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that because some people are a little bit nervous, freaked out, whatever, about a new system. So I've got some information from the elections officials. So we'll talk just a little bit about this, just to kind of allay some of the fears you might have. Electronic voting machines are accurate, simple to use, and can provide final election results within minutes after the close of voting. So that's quite a boon. Doesn't means no long counting into the night and other things. As to the actual voting process, you're going to go into the booth just like you always have, make your choices just like you always have. They'll give you a special pen that the machine can recognize. Then you're going to follow the instructions on the ballot just like you always have. So that part will be very familiar to you. The main difference is the actual paper itself or the form itself. So when you come out of the booth, instead of taking your vote and putting it into a cardboard box, you're going to feed it right into the electronic voting machine yourself. The machine will then tell you if your ballot has been accepted. If there are questions with the ballot, the machine will notify you, give you the option of submitting your ballot if it's been spoiled. And sometimes people want to spoil deliberately. That's your right as a voter. Or undervote, not voting for all the candidates. You're more than welcome to do that. It'll give you those options, or it'll give you the option to correct it if you so desire. The only option the machine won't accept is if you vote for more candidates than you're allowed to do. So that one will reject that. A machine attendant will be there on site at the polling station to help you if you have a problem. So we're not just going to people are not going to be thrown in there and asked to do it on their own. So there'll be some help for you there. And also there's going to be some additional help because the elections officers are going to have it set up at the All Candidates Forum on the 30th, which will be at the high school at 7 p.m. So please make sure you attend that. But the machine will be there, and you'll be able to ask questions of it, see how it works, and kind of get a feel for it. I'm told it's apparently easier to use than an ATM machine at a bank. So if you've used those before, you should have no problem with this. So 21st century, we're into electronic voting, and we'll see how that goes. Andru, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Doing this, and best of luck in the campaign in the next 2 weeks. Hope
Thanks for your work, Gord.
Successful for you.
I see how you're making Valemount better. Thank you.
Thank you.